All right, welcome everybody to our penultimate virtual tasting of 2022, our November virtual tasting with Miguel Lepe of Miguel Cellars. I was going to say Miguel Cellars. Miguel Lepe of Lepe Cellars is here. Before we begin, standard housekeeping notes. We'd love to hear from you. But if everybody is talking at the same time, it would get chaotic. So just go ahead and throw any questions, comments you have for Miguel about the wines, anything you want to ask him in the chat. And of course, Allison and I will bring that up as we are talking. We'll unmute everybody at the end and you'll have a chance to chat with Miguel at the very end. So if you want to hold your questions then you can, no problem there. We will be, what was I going to say? We're going to start with the Chardonnay and then work through the Pinot Noir, then the Malbec, then the Petit Verdot, just so you can get your wines in the proper order. Of course, we're recording this, so it'll be available for replay tomorrow morning after I have a chance to upload it to the YouTube page that we have there. And one last little housekeeping thing for those of you who are going to be joining us, either live now or if you're hearing this on the recording. Going to be joining us in December for our big holiday shindig with Alyssa Jacobson of Turning Tide Wines from Santa Barbara. We're going to be moving the date of that slightly. It's not going to be on Thursday the 14th. It's going to be, or excuse me, Thursday the 15th. It's going to be on Wednesday the 14th. So just pencil that in. We're going to do a Wednesday to avoid all of the holiday party and madness and all of that fun stuff. Okay. With that out of the way, let's get to the wines. Miguel, we always start by asking, what is the most memorable bottle of wine that you've ever opened?
Oh, that is a big question. Luckily I've opened many bottles, but the one that really kind of touches home and has a lot of meaning to me is the Figge Pinot Noir from Carmel Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I was
bottle sitting right there.
I know. It's like he was primed for this.
I try to collect as many as I can because this wine is just a very age-worthy Pinot, and I think it really kind of blows my mind because at that time in 2014 when I first started working for Figge, obviously the wines were really enjoyable, very bright, and fresh fruit. And I guess I just didn't realize the age worthiness of it. And I opened a bottle a couple of months ago, and I was just like blown away. So every so often, I open a bottle, just personal enjoyment, and I'm always just so impressed by it. And it's something about Monterey County is just these wines can really surprise you, and so this one is definitely top of my list.
Very nice.
And
we
go ahead. Worked for him, which is great. I mean, he was a wonderful winemaker, wonderful person who unfortunately passed too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we had Chris Miller from Petit Cellars on over the summer as one of our featured wineries, and talked quite a bit about Peter and his influence. Not only for young winemakers like you and for Chris, but really for Monterey County. I mean, in many ways, he was one of the 2 or 3 most influential winemakers in Monterey, just in terms of the wines he produced and really putting Monterey County on the map and getting it out to wider appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he was. I started with him in 2013 as one of his first interns, and I was young and I just was still kind of learning the ropes, So seeing how these wines are tasting now, after being aged for so long, it's just so impressive. Like he just knew it all, he's mostly a vineyard grower, but stepped into winemaking and built his own brand. So it was. I'm proud, definitely very proud.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great lineage to have. And so you started working for him in 2013, but what were you doing before that? Kind of take us through your journey into wine. Was it something that you were always interested from a young age? Was it college that, got the bug for you? When did it start for you?
It's definitely not something I was interested in. I actually had no idea about the wine industry. I didn't even know that was a thing. My family is not into wine. And so I kind of stumbled upon it just accidentally. And it was at my community college here in Salinas, Monterey
Mhm.
County, where I was doing all the prereqs to just transfer to San Diego State to major in business. Just really because I didn't know what else to do with my life. So I was like, well, I mean, let me just major in business. That should be a solid career. And so I did all my prereqs, and I was just kind of going down the list looking for some fun classes to take just to kind of fulfill my units to be able to transfer. And I saw this vineyard production class on that list. And I don't really know anything about vineyards, but I was saying, you was like, okay, grapevines. I love to garden. I love being outside. Let me take this class. And so I did. And it was my last semester there. And I had no idea how difficult that class was going to be. It was taught by a visiting professor from UC Davis, who was a plant geneticist. And this class was just way over my head.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it. You know, I still want to learn about it. I was so intrigued. I was like, this is difficult stuff, but I like it. And one of the unique things about that class is we got to take field trips to the wineries and vineyards in Monterey,
Mhm.
and it happened to be during the harvest. So I got to see all the production. So from the vineyard workers harvesting to the cellar workers, crushing and working with the new barrels, and just seeing all of that. I didn't really know what any of that really meant or what it was or what they were doing.
Yeah.
But I was just so fascinated. It really just kind of drew me in. It kept pulling me in more and more, and I just want to learn more about it. And so that kind of helped me, really dedicate myself to this class. And I mean, I gave it up my all. And then I found out you can actually major in wine, and make that a career. So I ended up going to Cal Poly as a enology and viticulture major.
Okay.
But unfortunately, my classes didn't transfer over because I didn't take any science classes. So I ended up staying at Harnell College, the community college, longer to fulfill that. So I literally changed my entire career path
Wow.
during my last semester.
Wow.
So
And
yeah,
I imagine that vineyard production class, it pretty much can only be during the fall, I would think. Like, in
yeah,
the spring, you don't really have much going on other than, okay, we've got bud break and leaf and we're gonna green
yeah,
harvest, but you're not doing the barreling, the crushing, the pump overs, all of that side of things.
yeah. So timing was everything, I guess, and
Yeah.
all by chance. Yeah, it's amazing how one class can really change your entire life.
Absolutely. That's a good theme for these things. I find
Yeah,
with a lot of the winemakers we deal with, there's one bottle, one experience, one mentor that they met who changes everything for them. So you're at Cal Poly, you get your science classes done, you're majoring in enology at this point, you graduate, and then what was the game plan? Was it just, I'm going to get out there and get as much experience as possible? Did you know that you wanted to start your own label eventually? Where was your headspace at upon graduation?
no, definitely did not think I'd start my own label or make my own wine or even become a business owner. I just thought I'd just work for somebody and make wine for somebody else. But the good thing about Cal Poly is that we were required to work at an actual winery, a commercial winery.
Mhm.
So I worked for a small winery out in Edna Valley, Claiborne and Churchill.
Oh, yes.
That was my first harvest. So my first experience crushing, doing punch downs, pump overs, all that stuff. And so, the more I did it, the more I fell in love with it. And I ended up doing a second internship, even though I wasn't required to. I actually didn't get credit for the second one because, yeah, unfortunately, but I loved it. So I didn't want to miss a harvest.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get as much experience as possible. So I just want every harvest. I just knew I was like, I want to crush. I just want to work for different wineries, different sizes. I work for small, medium, large wineries, kind of all over the place. I worked for Justin Vineyards in Paso, La Vigne in Paso. Worked all over California, Paul Hobbs up in Sonoma, and then going down to South America. But yeah, my mindset wasn't in creating my own brand. I just wanted to learn as much as I can about winemaking.
Nice.
So that's what my focus was. So it wasn't until after I graduated from Cal Poly that I was able to land a position at Figge.
Mhm. Got it. Was when during your travels, when you're, working at these other wineries, was there any one that kind of, or maybe a couple of them that really stood out in terms of the way that they shaped your philosophy for wine, or, kind of drew you to certain grapes? Obviously you work with everything, but you really love single varietals. You're not doing blends out there. Was that something that came out during your travels, or was that just something that you eventually decided to do on your own?
Uh, I think every winery that I worked with has been so different. They all have their own philosophies, their own styles, their own varieties that they work with. And, that really kind of helped, teach me, what I can do. And so I really personally enjoy just single varietals. I worked for some wineries that are all about blends, but they don't blend until, it's time to bottle. So being able to try those wines as a single varietal, I just always ask myself, well, why are they blending it? This tastes amazing the way it is. When I worked at Paul Hobbs, they made Petit Verdot, but it always got blended into their Bordeaux blends.
Right.
I just kept thinking to myself, this is amazing. And so when it came to that time when I came across the Petit Verdot from the small vineyard, I was just like, you know what? It's an amazing variety. I just want to showcase it for what it is, because people are missing out. They need to know what Petit Verdot tastes like. Because
I
once it's blended
second that
away,
emotion. Yeah.
you won't find it. You
Yeah.
know? So yeah, I think every winery has had an influence in my philosophies and my methods and kind of the way I want to showcase my wines.
Nice. So you start working with Peter, you make your way back up to Monterey. Was that always your intention to get back into Monterey County, Salinas, Carmel Valley, and make wines there?
No, so I'm from Salinas. And trust me, I tried to leave so many times. Just being young and wanting to get out and, move away from home and just kind of go out and explore and do my own thing. But every time I did, something always kept drawing me back. I've always wanted to come back, even though I still want to go out and explore and, live life. But, I definitely have a passion here. This is home to me, and I want to do the best I can with the varieties that are grown here.
Mhm. Nice. So yeah, let's start off. We've got the Chardonnay, of course, that we are drinking first, and this is a 2020 Chardonnay. So kind of take us through that vintage. What do you remember about it? What are some of the hallmarks that we should be looking for as we taste this wine?
Yeah, well, 2020, I'd say overall started out as a great vintage, but that was the year of all the fires in California.
Right.
So difficult year, but
I'm not getting any smoke taint on this, so you're safe.
yeah, no, you won't find any smoke taint on whites or anything that's been pressed early. Um, so luckily, we're able to escape the smoke with the Chardonnays, and most of my reds come from areas that were far enough away from the fires that didn't have any effect on the 2020 vintage for my personal wines.
Mhm.
But overall, aside from that, it was an excellent vintage. Even ripening in the vineyard, balance between heat and cool nights. So we got great flavor development, and I still think that wine is showing young. So as it opens up, you'll notice a lot of flavor development just kind of popping out of the glass, aroma and flavors. So overall, I think it was a good year.
Now, when you talk about great flavor development, what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking for bolder fruit? Are you looking for leanness? Are you looking for acidity? And obviously I imagine every winemaker is slightly different in what they're looking for, but to you, what gives a wine great flavor development in that sense?
So for me, I think majority of my wines are more on the lean side.
Mhm.
I like to showcase the fruit for what it is, so I don't do any heavy extraction. I don't do, high alcohol. I don't do heavy oak. I'm really trying to create a wine that's in balance, so it just kind of flows across the palate evenly, with still showcasing interesting flavors and aromas. So for this Chardonnay, I think being so bright in acidity, I kind of want to also balance that out with some barrel aging on the lees to kind of soften up the acidity and kind of bring out some of these secondary flavors, to kind of also, work well with like the citrus notes, the minerality as well. And so that's kind of my style for Chardonnays. I'm more of a Chablis style personally, is what I personally enjoy.
Nice.
Is this
So I
one?
don't do any new oak, so it's all neutral barrel.
That was my question. And do you do partial mallow, no mallow?
It's actually full mallow.
Oh,
Yeah. So just because it was so high in acid, I wanted to kind of round that out with full mallow and barrel aging.
That's interesting. I've now had a couple of wines where I've had that, really strong green apple note on the wine. And this one is, you definitely get that apple. It's not pure green, it's a little tart, but you think, oh, they did just a limited amount of mallow on this, but it's full mallow lactic, but you don't get that, that milky body or that green apple, but you still get that green apple. It's amazing. I don't know if that's just the way that the fermentation's happening.
that's the trick. It's called high acidity. No, because what I was always taught when I first learned about wine, just in terms of malolactic. So just to reiterate, in case for anyone, you crush the grapes in the secondary fermentation, the malolactic fermentation is converting apple acids to lactic acids. The dairy, you get the rounder styles.
Yeah.
So what I was always told is, well, in France, where they get like 100 days of sunshine, they have really high acid wines, like the acid is off the roof. So when they do mallow, it brings it down to high acid, but palatable.
Mm-hmm.
And the Californians get 362 days of sunshine. And so our acid levels and our sugar levels were high. And whenever they would do 100% mallow, they wiped the acid out because it wasn't cutting, it was wiping it out. And what it was left with was this unctuous stuff, and then they throw in a new oak, which just killed the wine on top of it. Right. And so, if you have a
which gives you Rombauer,
if you have a wine that's super high acid, partial or full mallow, from my understanding, is just going to bring it from crazy to palatable, and you just aren't killing it. But if you're going to pick an overripe grape and do it, you're going to kill the acid and get unctuous and flabby.
Yeah, and this is a high acid site. It's only 6 miles from Monterey Bay, the coast. And so it's really cold where it is. And it's also on the valley floor, so even colder.
Yeah.
So it's always, been this way. So I always wanted to kind of balance that out, It's still showing great acidity.
It is, yes.
The barrel aging, definitely helps.
Golf clap for Allison's explanation of malolactic fermentation right there. But you
should hear me on diurnal shift in the grapes, what their little muscles do.
Take us through the Carmel Valley, because most people, they think, well, and we'll talk. I think one of the beauty of the 4 wines that we have here is you have the full breadth of Monterey County, from cold to hot and everything in between. But take us through the unique terroir and geography of the Carmel Valley, because most people know Monterey, they know Carmel, they may even know Salinas, more the coastal towns, but Carmel Valley, it feels like it's kind of a, just in terms of its notoriety, it's more recent, in terms of, obviously they've been growing wine there for a while, but I think just for its awareness among winemakers, it's kind of a newer area for them.
Yeah, so it's a small AVA. It's its own AVA, Carmel Valley. But a lot of differences. You can start along the coast and work your way inland. Kind of driving through, it starts out as kind of flat, coastal. Further you go inland, mountainous, windy roads, and it gets a lot hotter. You can drive in 10 minutes, and it's like night and day. Starting from cold, where my Chardonnay is grown, you can go just a few miles in, and it's hot. That's when, and then you'll be finding vineyards that are growing Syrah or Cabernet, Malbec even. Like there's a huge difference, and I think that's what makes Monterey County as a whole just so unique. Is yeah, we're coastal, and maybe the majority of consumers think as Monterey just being a cold climate. They think Chardonnay and Pinot,
Right.
but we can grow so many different varieties from Burgundy, Rhone, Bordeaux, everything in between.
Spanish,
We'll find it all here.
Portuguese, all
And
sorts
if
of
you
stuff.
remember when we had Martha on, she's Monterey, but on the warmer.
We have not had
Oh no,
Martha on
Menacea.
yet.
Sorry, I skipped for a second. I was thinking cold and warm areas. Is Carmel Valley, you said its own AVA, but all your wines, are they also sub AVAs, or are all these places within the Carmel Valley AVA?
So all my bottles have the AVA on there. The Chardonnay is Carmel Valley AVA, and then everything's in Monterey County. Everything I work with is in Monterey County. Most of my reds come from San Antonio Valley AVA, and that's just 30 minutes north of Paso.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I think that's what the beauty is. You have, 3 out of 3 different AVAs here with entirely different profiles in terms of their weather, their geography, the way the wind and the rain and the weather moves past them. Because I know, Santa Lucia Highlands, which we'll talk about with the Pinot, it's basically the funnel coming off of Monterey Bay. So it gets the rain, it gets the wind, it gets the fog kind of coming down through that narrow chute. Yeah. Does Carmel Valley have the same type of but I imagine because of the mountains, it's a little more protected. It sounds like, especially with the heat that can be there.
Yeah, it's very well protected there. So you don't get the winds that you would get through Salinas Valley and SLH. So yeah, more protected. So it does hold the cold and it does hold the heat well, which is great.
So it's like the McDLT, keeps the hot side hot and the cool side cool. And for those of you that remember that, you were old. No, that's interesting. So I imagine, for Chardonnay, that's got to be, especially if you're on the valley floor, I imagine you're prone to like frosts and cold things. So it's got to be a very temperamental vineyard
to work with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be tricky, and it's definitely a site that is very every year it can be either good or bad. It really depends. The weather has a huge effect on that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're doing neutral barrels, as you said, with this, and obviously doing lees. Are you doing any batonnage, stirring of the lees to add that in, or is it just letting it rest on the lees to add a little bit of that body but not too much of it?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm not doing any stirring. I just let it rest on the fine lees for about 10 months. So you'll get some of that lees effect, but not overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful Chardonnay. It's really, really well balanced. And I know Allison's the same way. We tend to like the higher acidity Chardonnays, more of the Chablis style, which you get, but you definitely can feel more of that mouthfeel on this, which is nice from those, from the lees, and probably a little bit of that barrel influence of it, but not too much. What are you typically looking at the ageability for this wine? Is it something that somebody can lay down? I mean, this is a 20, so it's got a little bit more age than 21, but when are you typically releasing them? And then how long do you think somebody can hold on to one of these?
All my wines that you guys are enjoying right now, they've all been released. So they're very young wines. I do very small production, 2 to 5 barrels of each variety, which means I'm releasing them pretty early. But I think they're enjoyable at a young age, but they can go on for another 5-7 years, maybe even more.
Nice.
So it's really interesting to see the development of that wine year after year and how it's progressing in the bottle.
Yeah. And how do you decide which vineyards you're going to work with, which grapes you're going to work with? Are these all vineyards that you've had prior relationships with? Did you go in knowing, I'm a Monterey winemaker, I have to do a Chard, I have to do a Pinot, and then these are the other things I'm going to do? Or are you experimenting every year? I know, when I tasted with you You have some new wines, the Malbec, which we're going to try, and a few other things. So how are you deciding every year what to work with and where to work?
Well, I like to work with small vineyards, like really small boutique, mom and pop type vineyards, where it's only just, an acre or two, so I don't work with, too large vineyards. So for example, this Chardonnay is only an acre, so I take it all.
Mhm.
I like working with sites where I actually have an influence on the way it's grown, all the growing practices, because I want to be able to be part of every aspect of the winemaking process, from start to finish. And so a lot of it's word of mouth, just going around, building those relationships, meeting growers, and just kind of picking their brain and like, hey, well, what else is out there? Do you know somebody that's, maybe doing something interesting? Somebody that's kind of has the same, philosophies that I do. I like to be very minimalistic and just hands off and just kind of really let nature kind of show off the fruit for what it is. And so that's kind of what I'm searching for.
What is the vineyard this is from?
This is River Ranch Vineyard in Carmel Valley. So they grow Chardonnay and Pinot, and I just take all the Chardonnay.
Do they grow a lot more Pinot?
No, actually, it's the same amount.
Oh. So there's some lucky bastard out there that's getting all the Pinot probably, and then
Yeah,
he
I think
takes all of it.
it's like the brother of the family that gets it. I don't know, he does something with it, but I get all the Chardonnay.
Nice. And this is the only white wine that you do. Do you have any other interest in doing whites? Other whites or?
The only other white I do is a sparkling Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
And
Wow.
that's about it.
Nice.
And everything else is all red.
Method traditional on that and all the good stuff.
Pet nat?
Oh, you're doing pet nat. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So we always love to talk food, and Matt and Carrie end up always being our folks who are cooking fun dishes along with it. So we're always interested to find out what they're cooking tonight with it. But what food pairings would you normally recommend with this? Obviously, Chardonnay has a lot of kind of standard things, but it's such a blank canvas. It really can work with so many different things. But what do you typically recommend with this?
I think with that nice acidity that it has, kind of creamy pasta dishes, kind of balance out that creaminess. That's usually my go-to with this one.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my own personal take, but I'd love to hear what the crowd has to say about.
Oh, yeah, they did a winter white salad with Belgian endive, pear, pine nuts, roasted cauliflower, and a blue cheese buttermilk dressing. Wow, I feel like you could have done the salad without the cauliflower and just put the cauliflower on the side and dip that in the blue cheese dressing, and then done like a little vinaigrette with the others, like a little mustardy vinaigrette. You would have had a salad and an entree instead of throwing it all together. But you know what? You do you, boo. You do you. Yeah, the acidity on this is so great. I mean, I could see our vegans aren't here tonight, fortunately. So I will say like a classic Austrian Wiener Schnitzel would be fantastic with this, like veal pounded super thin, breaded and fried or sauteed would be a really nice pairing with this, because that acidity, you have a lot of apple, but then just that little touch of lemon would go well with that. I think this would go great with pork.
I think it would go really well with a nice, rich scallop in a brown butter sauce.
Okay, we got brown butter scallops, we've got pork chops, we've got Wiener Schnitzel, we've got all sorts of options on this one. But it is lovely. It is a delicious Chardonnay. I'm trying to wean myself out of the ABC world, the anything but Chardonnay world. Living here in Paso, we don't have Chardonnay. We don't know what that is.
It could very well be in the ABC world. It's called Always Bring Chardonnay.
Oh, I thought that's Always Bring Champagne, but that's
that too. But if you're trying to wean yourself off of the ABC, I'm saying just rephrase it.
Michelle's saying tofu and eggplant, like separately with this or together? Like you're throwing tofu and eggplant together in a single dish. Together. Okay. So tofu and eggplant. That sounds interesting. I can't eat eggplant, but I do love tofu. So I think that's a
But
good.
it's a question mark, so I think it's more for Miguel. Like, do you think that would work?
Oh, I am not the person to ask for eggplant. I actually have I have a genetic predisposition that I cannot eat eggplant. It tastes like metallic burning to me. So I do not think this would be a good wine to pair with metallic burning. So I am going to say tofu, yes. Eggplant, no. What
I
could you
think
sub in?
I didn't say your name, Chris.
What? You didn't say whose name?
I asked the other guy.
Oh, sorry.
No, I said.
Miguel, tofu and eggplant. What do you think?
I don't know if I'm definitely not the biggest fan of eggplants. Probably not the best person to ask.
I think I think the eggplant would have to be a denser delivery of it, as opposed to, I mean, eggplant, but you don't want to have something with like a vinegar citrus sort of direction with eggplant. You want to go a little more cheesy.
Right. Fried eggplant. There you go. Yeah. Fried eggplant would work. Pretty much you can fry doorknobs in chalk. And if you serve it with enough of the blue cheese buttermilk dressing or the Chardonnay, it's going to be great. So there you go. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to move from the Carmel Valley south and closer to the coast to your Santa Lucia Highlands Pinot Noir. Now this is 2021. So young Pinot Noir on this one. Is that kind of your intention to always bring your Pinots very young into the world? Or do you think Santa Lucia Highland Pinots are good on the younger side, or are they something that can stand a little bit of age on them?
They can definitely stand quite a bit of age on them. My goal is to create a balanced wine. So my intention is to have my wines, even if they're being drunk young, to still show very well. So yeah, this is a 2021, but I think it's tasting great right now, and I think has a long life ahead of itself. So, it's only going to change, quite a bit, year after year, or even within just months. All for the better. I think it's only going to become more interesting.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting now. I can tell you that much. All right, I have to ask you a little bit about your logo, the Lepe Cellars logo. I'm not going to ask you how you came up.
Can I ask one more question about
Go ahead, absolutely.
Before we move on? I'm curious the influence of Figge. You were saying such a long aging wine and everything like that, and his style of winemaking, what you learned. How much of that are you trying to emulate, or how much does that play a role in your Pinot making?
Well, I think when I started with Figge, and I was really young and still kind of learning. I already graduated, but still kind of learning the ropes and just trying to get an understanding of grape growing and just practices in the cellar. And I think at the time I didn't know enough about ageability for wines. I'm still trying to figure out okay, what is Figge's approach? What's he doing? Also, he's been doing it way longer than I have, and he has so much experience, and he worked for so many different vineyards and wineries before he started his own. And I guess I was just trying to kind of wrap my head around okay, what your wine tastes great now. And it wasn't until many years later where I started popping open bottles, I was like, wow, okay, he clearly knew what he was doing, because this is amazing. And I remember he was doing he would harvest earlier, 23, 24 bricks, good acidity, and it's showing well now. And I think because of those practices that he implemented. And so seeing that firsthand, just seeing how the wines are tasting, kind of helped influence my approach to winemaking as well. Not trying to do, overly ripe or, just trying to kind of make it more leaner in style so that it does have that ageability. And I think that's what I was trying to do with my Pinot. Pick it a little earlier. I'm not trying to have high alcohol. I'm not trying to have overly ripe fruits. I do want that acidity so that it can show well later on, 10 years from now or even longer.
Yeah. Were there any lessons, either on the crush pad or in the barrel room that, really stood out that you took away from working with Peter that, you still incorporate today?
Well, working for such a small winery and being his only employee there, I got to learn how to do everything, and he taught me how to do everything, and he made sure I knew how to do everything. And so he really just kind of put me in charge, and I got to a point where I was able to run the cellar myself, and it was because of him. And I got to be part of every aspect, from not just the vineyard or the cellar, but even in his tasting room.
So,
Yeah.
so on that note, and this will tie into Chris's question, but you said a little while ago that you never intended to make your own wine. So what changed?
So one day in the cellar, it was me, Peter, and Pancho just having lunch together. And he just asked me if I was going to make wine that year. I was just kind of surprised. I didn't even cross my mind that I could do that.
What year was this?
This was 2013. So when
Your first year.
yeah, it was my first year.
Oh.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. And I was just like, sure, why not? And I made Gewürztraminer my first year, and he helped me source the grapes. And
Wow.
it was just a couple barrels, just for fun. And so that's kind of how that started. Didn't really think much of it other than just get the grapes, crush it, and make the wine, and we'll drink it later. Kind of, yeah, that's honestly how it started. And then
you were hooked.
yeah, the next harvest, he asked me again, so you're gonna make more wine this year? And I was just like, again, no plans. It's like, yeah, sure, why not? And then he took it to the next step. He's like, well, if you're gonna make wine this year, maybe you should look into being licensed so you can actually sell your wine and make some money off of it.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay. But again, I had no idea what any of that meant.
Peter was just playing a little flute, and you and everybody else just following along behind him. Seriously.
Yeah. So little did I know what I was getting myself into. So he really encouraged me and helped me kind of go through the process of getting fully licensed. And he was part of every step of the way. So he really, taught me a lot in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you, so I mean, I know he had a tasting room in Carmel. Were you pouring out of his tasting room once you were fully licensed, or just kind of?
I was still such a small brand. I was only making a few barrels. And so I was just selling locally. I would go around to like local grocery stores, like small establishments, and just kind of sell my wine that way.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a fantastic lesson there to basically get you.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely helped me. He pointed me in the right direction. He said, start with this store or this restaurant. I know the buyer. They'll go easy on you. It'll be a good learning opportunity. So he did, So I definitely learned a lot that way.
Nice.
It's like, when you think about how important a mentor is, and a lot of people don't have them, or I feel that there's a void in generations currently that have lost out on that. And when you hear a story like that, you see how important mentorship is, because it's invaluable, for good or bad.
Yeah, it gives you the skills and the pathway to, if you're, into whatever it is that you're studying and your mentor is leading you towards, it gives you that guidance to make a push and become, ultimately, as Darth Vader once said, the student has to become the master, and that's the goal of the whole thing. So, no, that's a fast. So how is that Gewürz?
I have one bottle left.
Oh,
From that. Yep, I know.
wow.
Saving it for a special occasion. Who knows for what? But I mean, it was excellent. It was a dry Gewürztraminer. And the reason why I decided to do a Gewürztraminer is because my first harvest at Claiborne and Churchill, when I was in school, they specialize in Gewürztraminer and Riesling. And so I just kind of wanted to try my own thing and see if I could do something just as great as they did.
Yeah, I was gonna connect those dots. So your time at Claiborne and Churchill clearly special for you. Did they have any philosophies or lessons? I know, again, you were even younger, still in college, but it sounds like it was a pretty important time for you. Was there anything you took away from your work there that you're now incorporating into your wines?
Yeah, they're definitely really focused on just kind of minimalistic approach to winemaking, allow the wine to make itself and really showcase the region and the variety for what it is. And they were very they're all about that, and I really love that about Claiborne and Churchill.
Yeah.
And so I took that with me. I worked for a lot of wineries, even large wineries, where that's not their approach.
Right.
And I never forgot those lessons that I learned at Claiborne.
Nice.
I learned a lot of valuable things working for large wineries, but some of the things I was not going to let go, and I wanted to implement into my own methods.
Yeah, and you'll eventually build yourself a straw bale barn and store your wines there.
What's your total case production?
I'm just under 1,000 cases.
Okay.
Michelle's wondering did you learn how to make wine from the ground up at Cal Poly before you worked at the winery?
Yeah, so I learned basics at Cal Poly. So more of the book learning, but also Cal Poly is very known for being very hands-on. So they had a small little winery at the time at Cal Poly. Now they have a large commercial winery for the students. So yeah, I actually got to learn how to make wine, crush the grapes, ferment, do punch downs, all the way through bottling, on a very small scale. It was just kind of a learning winery. And then, but yeah, working for commercial wineries, of all sizes, really how I learned, just on the job training.
Very nice. Yeah, let's jump back and talk a little bit about this Pinot. So SLH, Santa Lucia Highlands, amazing area. I think it's really obviously the most well-known of the AVAs in Monterey County. Is this oh, it is McIntyre Vineyard. So tell us a little bit about the McIntyre Vineyard. I mean, a lot of people know Gary's Vineyard, they know Sobranes, there's certainly some famous vineyards out of the Santa Lucia Highlands, but tell us about the McIntyre Vineyards, where this comes from.
So McIntyre is on the north end of SLH. Also an excellent grower, a very well-known grower. He's definitely one of the leading experts in the area. So it's definitely a high quality site. And I've always admired McIntyre. I love their wines. He grows for other people as well. And, I see the quality in the vineyard. I've been able to kind of build that relationship with Steve McIntyre. I've been very fortunate to be able to get a little bit of fruit from him, just a couple tons. It's definitely some of the most expensive fruit in Monterey County, but it's for good reason too. You can taste it in the wine itself. From anyone that's sourcing from that region, it's really unique. I think it definitely puts Monterey kind of on a pedestal, for Pinot and Chardonnay. But beautiful sites, it's all managed very, very well, and it's all organic and all, they follow a very hands-on approach. So I really personally enjoy working with this vineyard. And I mean, it kind of shows in the fruit itself, in the wine.
Yeah. So what do you think it is that makes it so unique?
I think the Pinots that are grown in SLH, and I think personally also in McIntyre's vineyard, is there's so much complexity to this Pinot. It's got the fruits, it's got the herbal notes, it's got the spiciness, it's got the acidity. The fruit from red and darker fruits. It's just kind of very broad spectrum, but very intriguing. I think that's what makes SLH really unique in terms of Pinot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get that kind of a little bit of an earthy forest floor nose, but there's also a hint of cola on it. And then there's a richness to this, a fullness on the body. When you're bringing the fruit in, you know, what's your philosophy at that point? Pinot obviously is such a difficult grape to work with. You know, how are you treating this? Are you doing any stem inclusion or, you know, whole cluster pressing? Are you neutral barrel? Are you, you know, take us through the process of processing this fruit.
Yeah, so actually the first year that I worked with this fruit was in 2020, and I didn't do any whole cluster. I just wanted to kind of see what the wine would turn out, you know, just kind of in its most purest form.
Mhm.
And it was a very fruit forward, you know, it really showcases the fruits so well. But I was trying to create some balance with fruits and kind of earthiness and spice. And so for the 2021, I did 50% whole cluster. And I've done a lot of whole cluster Pinots, you know, working at Figge and a bunch of other wineries, and I've always enjoyed it. But normally they're doing 20%, 25%. I just thought I'd go a little crazy and do 50%. And I think it worked out pretty well. I like that kind of.
That's too crazy, man. Hold on. 50%. That's no, man. No.
Yeah, some people wouldn't do it, but I just kind of, it was just a
You were
gut
feeling
feeling.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know how it would turn out, but in my mind, it sounded like it would work.
Mhm.
You have such a very fruit forward site. Let's just throw a bunch of stems in it to kind of balance that out.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my mentality with this Pinot. And so, yeah, 50% whole cluster during fermentation, gentle punch downs, and ended up aging this wine in about 20% new French oak and the rest all neutral.
Okay.
Yeah, for about 10 months.
Yeah. And then just a quick release on it. Was that something you always intended, or, you know, was it just you tasted and it was ready?
It kind of took a few months for that whole cluster to really integrate. You know,
Okay.
a lot of that whole cluster was kind of up front and overshadowing the fruit. But then over time, it kind of both started to kind of intermingle, and I was really enjoying it. So I was like, you know, let's release this now. I think people will enjoy it. I'll say it's a young wine, but it's going to change so much. You know, it's going to become more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of complexity to it right now at this young age, which I think only bodes well for the future as it ages a little bit more. It's drinking wonderfully. I do love the spice notes on this. You know, obviously duck, classic pairing with this, filet mignon. Any other fun or unusual pairings that you would kind of throw with this?
Seeing that this Pinot's got so much going on, like, I mean, you could do like a really nice charcuterie board with a bunch of different stuff on it, you know,
Yeah.
just different flavors, just kind of like throw everything at it.
Interesting. Hungarian mushroom soup with dill.
Yeah, the dill is interesting to match kind of those herbal notes. I can see that.
Yeah.
It's
Very
good.
interesting. Yeah. So are the mushrooms from Hungary, or is it like mushrooms done in a Hungarian style? That's what I'm confused about.
Ooh.
It's kind of, you know what it is? It's kind of like a beef stroganoff sauce. If
Oh,
you
okay.
think of that.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it's
Without-
similar
yeah,
to
without
without the
meat.
meat. So it's just mushroom, and then
Rich.
it's very rich and deep, and it actually goes really well with this.
So almost like a mushroom stew, basically. Then,
Mhm,
like it's a soup, but you could call it a stew because of the thickness to it. That's really interesting. Yeah. All right. Kind of halfway between a soup, a stoop. A stoop. It's a stoop, is what it is. Very nice. You're currently the assistant winemaker at Wrath Vineyards, right there in the heart of the Santa Lucia Highlands. How did that come about? Is that something you're enjoying? I mean, do you eventually see yourself, you know, doing Lepe Cellars full time?
I mean, that is the goal, to do Lepe Cellars full time. But it is very convenient working for another winery and making my wine at their winery as well. So,
Sure.
like I said, I have a dual position at Rath Winery, so being the assistant there and also client as well.
Yep.
So I do have the perks of being able to use the facility, all the crush equipment. We are a custom crush winery as well, and we make other brands there with various other winemakers that kind of guide the winemaking, for their own brands.
Yep.
So yeah, it really works out. It's a good little community that we have going on there.
Nice. And I don't want to, I wasn't ignoring you, Michelle. Michelle thinks lamb loin chops with cherry cardamom sauce would be an excellent pairing with this particular wine. So I can definitely see that. Lamb is interesting. I mean, but I think this does have enough heft to pair with lamb. Normally you think of something heavier, Syrah or whatnot with lamb, but yeah, this would be very interesting with that. Awesome. All right, let's move on to, we're going to move south, at this point, down to the San Antonio Valley. And like you were saying, very, very close to Paso, very warm. Was this an area that you were always interested in working in? Obviously, did Peter work? I didn't think Peter worked much in this. He was pretty much Pinot and Chard. So what brought you down to Lockwood and some of the more Bordeaux varietals that you're working with down there?
It was just kind of a random phone call that took me down there. There's a grower down there that needed a home for his grapes, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. He called somebody that I was standing next to, one of our clients over at Figge, and he just said to him, "Hey, I got these grapes. I don't have anyone that has committed to buying them. Do you know of anybody that's just willing to just take them, for free?" and so the person that answered the phone, he's like, "Well, I don't need any grapes, but I know a young winemaker that's just getting started that might be interested in some free grapes." And it happened to be Zinfandel down in San Antonio Valley, and that's how I got introduced to Zinfandel. And I still currently work with that vineyard to this day. So that's what brought me down there, and this was back in 2015.
Okay.
That was my first exposure to San Antonio Valley. Before that, I had no idea about that AVA. It's kind of tucked away. A lot of people don't know about it, but an amazing location, amazing site. And so ever since I got introduced to that Zen, I started to go around exploring. It's an area that's really been untouched. It's like kind of going back in history. It's there's not a whole lot out there, just land, vineyards, and
naval bases.
Yeah.
And some artificial lakes around there. Yeah, so just like for those, because I think a lot of people here aren't familiar with the San Antonio Valley, but let's sort of give them the geography. This is basically, like you were saying earlier, it's about 30 miles north of Paso Robles, north of that Monterey. I guess that would make it about 20 miles north of the Monterey County line. So very hot near the towns of, like, is that closer to Bradley and Jolon, or is that like near Lockwood?
Bradley, Jolon, Lockwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just kind of desert, but also at the same time, you've got the very tail end of I guess, no, it's still the Santa Lucias, but it's not the peak like it is in Santa Lucia Highlands. Yeah. And then you've got the Pinnacles, kind of the Piscinas range over there to the right. So it's the very start of that portion of the Salinas Valley, it feels like.
Yeah.
Interesting. And lots of heat, I imagine, not nearly as cool as the other areas, but does it get some of that, Monterey Bay breeze and weather kind of blowing off through down that Salinas Valley?
It still does. Obviously not as much because it is protected by the mountains. It is its own tucked away valley. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it does get some of that coastal breeze. So you do have some influence there with the cooler nights, but you still get plenty of heat as well. Nice. So in that area, you'll find a lot of Bordeaux and Rhone varieties grown there.
Mhm.
You won't find any Pinot or Chardonnay. So yeah, it's definitely an area meant for bigger reds.
Yeah, I know. Pierce Ranch is a winery that I've worked with that does a lot of Spanish and Portuguese grapes out there. And our friend Adam Lazar, whose wines we featured a while back, he sources a lot of grapes out in that area as well. So you mentioned you started with the Zinfandel, you're still working with the Zinfandel, but what drew you to the Bordeaux's? And something like Malbec, and this is a new grape for you, right? I think this is the
Yeah.
the first time you worked with this?
Yeah, it actually comes from Pierce Ranch's vineyard.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're Panhandle Vineyard. So yeah, right there, on the southern end of San Antonio Valley, and it was just really me going around and seeing what's new, what's exciting, and just kind of exploring the land out there. And I came across this Malbec from Pierce Ranch, and I met with him. He walked me through the vineyard, and it just looked so beautiful. I just couldn't say no. I wanted to like really work with this variety. I love Malbec personally,
Mhm.
but you don't see a whole lot of Malbec around this area, especially Monterey.
No.
Yeah, other than Pierce, I don't know who else is doing it. Maybe Scheid, but it's I wanted to really kind of give it my own twist, my own, kind of put my own taste on this Malbec. So I was really happy with it. Excellent quality. 21 was probably one of the best vintages we've had in a long time. It's definitely up there. And so I was really lucky to be able to work with this fruit.
Nice. So what is your own twist on this Malbec?
So people have a perception of what Malbec should taste like, and they usually think Argentina, or just kind of big, rich, heavy.
Yeah.
And that I'm not about that. That's not really what my personal taste is. I'm not trying to be overly extracted, and that's fine if people enjoy that. And sometimes I'll still enjoy that myself, but I think on an everyday basis, I'm trying to make wines that are in balance, that you can enjoy a glass or two of, or if you're into food pairing, do food pairings with it as well. So I just want to create a wine that is good for any occasion. And so, I mentioned earlier, my wines tend to be on the more leaner style. I tend to harvest earlier, so lower bricks, which means lower alcohol, a little more acidity, even for these reds that are in technically a hotter region, but they hold their acid very well.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of style I'm trying to aim for.
Allison's being quiet because she's watching real-time vote counts from Nevada and Arizona right now is what she's watching. But
No, I'm being quiet because I'm listening to what he says, and I think it's true. And I'm really enjoying the Malbec because it's not a big style and shows a really beautiful expression of Malbec, one that I have not had.
it does. I think the most amazing thing on the label of your bottle is the 13% that this Malbec is. I think that is, outside of a few, very, very high elevation South American, Argentinian wines I've seen, that's about the lowest I've ever seen for Malbec. Maybe
has more alcohol than your Malbec.
That's true. As does his Pinot. His Pinot is substantially higher.
Yeah. So
actually, when your Pinot is higher than your Petit Verdot, that's a unique philosophy right there. But no, and you mentioned that you had spent some time working down in South America. Were you in Argentina, or did you work with Malbec when you were down there?
No, I actually didn't. I was in Chile.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
Carmenere and Bordeaux.
I didn't work with Carmenere, surprisingly. I worked a lot with Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Some excellent Sauvignon Blancs too.
And was it Pais, the PAIS, the local grape there?
Yeah.
Nice. No, this is a stunning Malbec. I mean, most people when they have Malbec in mind, it's like dark fruit, really rich, full-bodied. The acid is kind of moderate but not high. It's the tannins are not overpowering. So, but this this has such a leanness to this. I mean, this brings me to like, God, even some of the like Cahors Malbecs that I've had from France out the Bordeaux have that acidity, but this is so lean. It's I mean, it's really beautiful and elegant in that sense. Yeah, it's a beauty. So are you doing any oak aging on this, or what's the process for this?
This one has minimal new oak on it, so it's about 15% new French oak, and the rest is all neutral.
Mhm.
So just enough to kind of give it some spiciness, but not to be overwhelming either. I do
Nice.
want to showcase the fruit, and like I said, I think that site was just beautiful. I love San Antonio Valley. I think there's great vineyards out there that have yet to be discovered or put on the map. So I want to do the best I can to really showcase the fruit for what it is.
Yeah. Well, Sandy thinks this Malbec is beautiful with the Q at the end. So the Q stands for quality. No, it's lovely. And why? I mean, that's an interesting question. Like, why do you think that San Antonio Valley has kind of been not ignored, but is it just that, most people, when it comes to Monterey, they think Santa Lucia Highlands, they think Pinot and Chardonnay, they're not thinking that there's that warmer weather aspect to it?
I think so. I think maybe just because San Antonio Valley or some of those more southern AVAs,
Mhm.
they're away from the focal point of Monterey. When
Right.
people come here, it's a tourist area, so they go to Monterey, Carmel, Pebble Beach, or Big Sur, and then they just stay there. They don't go out and explore, more inland areas. So unless the wines unless the wines are served at a restaurant or there's a local tasting room along the coast,
Mhm.
they're probably not going to go out and venture into that area unless maybe they're going down to Paso and happen to swing by. But
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, it is tucked away and out of sight, I think, for most people.
Yeah, it's a shame, and would hope that places like Pierce Ranch or whatnot that have vineyards down there and making wines would, either put a tasting room up in Monterey or Carmel or down in Paso. But I guess it is kind of that tweener zone. It's sort of that middle area where there's not a lot of urban life going on there, so
Yeah.
it kind of gets lost in the middle. But
Mhm.
no, this is a really amazing Malbec. So what drew you to Malbec? Was it just literally when you were driving around, you're like, ooh, Malbec, something nobody else is really doing, I want to work with it? Or did you, what was the inspiration for Malbec?
I think, yeah, part of it was kind of just driving around, checking out these vineyards, and tasting wines that other people are making from that area, and just kind of wanted, for my own curiosity, just wanted to kind of give a shot at it and see what I could do. You
Mhm.
know, if I feel like this site is really unique and has something special, I do want to work with it. I want to be able to see like what this fruit can do, in my hands. And so that was really how that happened. It's not that I had any intention to, specifically make Malbec, but every year I like trying something new and exploring new sites and new vineyards, new varieties. Even if it's a variety I've never worked with, I still want to try it out. I think it's just that curious part of me.
Yep. Nice. Did you hold any of this back, or did you basically just disgorge and bottle all of this and kind of have it ready to go?
I don't know, bottled it all and just was ready to show it.
Nice.
How many different grape varieties are you working with right now?
Um, let's see. Let me name them. It'll be easier. Um, Sparkling Sauv Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot, Grenache, Zinfandel, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cap Franc, and
And Petit,
And what?
Cabernet.
Okay.
So 9.
yeah, 8 or 9. That's a good number.
Yeah.
9 if you count the Cabernet. I was counting a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for keeping track.
I don't know if you ever answered the story of your label.
No, I don't think I did, actually.
No. We were going to come back to it, but we can answer it now.
Yeah. So that image on my labels, it is literally me. So if you check out my website, the first thing you see is a photo of me carrying a barrel on my back.
Mhm.
And that photo was taken at Petit Cellars when I first started working there. And this was before I had any intention of making wine. So I literally just did it for fun. Some of my friends and I were hanging out in the cellar, like, hey, this be a really cool photo. You know, carry a barrel on your back like Atlas, carrying the world on his shoulders. And literally just did it for fun. Just kind of goofing around in the cellar, and that's all it was. There was really nothing more to it other than that. And then it wasn't until I was kind of figuring out what to do with, my label and the design and what my logo is going to be. I have a friend that's a graphic designer, and she's like, well, actually, I could probably turn that into a logo and might actually look really cool, on your label. And so that's kind of how that started.
Mhm.
Just a random photo, friends hanging out in the cellar, and then later on ended up being the logo.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. And I love the like copper on black motif. I think that's just it's such a unique color scheme that you don't see all the time, but it really pops for these labels and adds, there's an elegance to it, which I really like.
Yeah, I really like that. The only difference between the actual photo and the logo is in the photo, I'm barefoot. And I didn't want to be barefoot in my logo, so I had the artist put boots on me.
Also, as every artist knows, feet are the hardest thing to draw on the human body. So yeah, shoes are just easy. I'm glad that was the story and not that you're like a, Ayn Rand follower and this is your homage to Atlas Shrugged. I was gonna say, was this one of those like Peter put you up to like, no, go carry that barrel on your back over here?
Yeah.
Or was it like he said, go move that barrel over here, and you didn't realize there were jacks or little lifts, and you were like, nope, we're doing this.
Before he told me we had a forklift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's called intern
Hazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's too funny. No, this is delicious. For me, this is crying out for steak, but I would also love this with something like seared ahi. I think it's got that high acidity. You bring a lot of flavor, but if you did like a pepper crusted seared ahi, I think this would really bring out a lot of those beautiful flavors in it. So it's a really, really wonderful wine and a nice example of Malbec. And you're right. I mean, even here in Paso Robles, there are not a whole lot of people doing 100% Malbecs. Most of the Malbec gets blended into the Bordeaux varietals that are around here. So it's very, very disappointing because it can be a beautiful grape when done well.
Oh, yeah.
Have you thought about, well, I guess you did. I mean, you worked with a lot of Sauvignon Blanc in South America. Is that sort of the impetus behind you doing the sparkling Sauvignon Blanc?
Yeah, I actually initially started just doing just regular still Sauv Blanc. I learned a lot about it working down there.
Mhm.
And then, but I've always had a curiosity about sparkling. I've never worked for a winery that did sparkling. And so it's kind of self-taught in that sense. It's a completely different method.
Yeah.
I can make still wine all day long, but sparkling, there's it's definitely a lot more labor intensive, a lot more steps to it, and you have to be very precise. So I went through a lot of trials, just kind of trying to figure it out. I read so many books. I do have some friends that do specialize in sparkling.
Michelle's holding up the photo of you barefoot. And
there's the barefoot.
Yeah.
I mean, who puts a barrel on their back barefooted? That's the thing.
I know, that was dangerous. What if I dropped it? But so yeah, that's I'm reading a lot of books and just talking to a lot of friends about this, sparkling methods, and so that's kind of, I've always been curious about it, so I just wanted to try something new. Again, that's the curiosity in me about winemaking.
And before we jump into the last wine, I have to ask, I got to know you because you have a tasting room in Carmel that's inside of an art gallery. How did you come to have that? And, your day job is down in Soledad area, which is, a good hour and 15 minutes from Carmel. So how's the commute?
Commute's horrible. Yeah, no doubt about it. But so that tasting room, really interesting actually, because the tasting room I'm in right now used to be Figge's tasting room. Long time ago. He's had that for many years before I even started working for him. And when I did work for him, I would do part-time in the tasting room, bounce back between the tasting room and the cellar. So I'd actually be behind that bar pouring Figge. And then it changed hands after Figge moved over to Carmel Valley, because he finally outgrew that space, moved to a larger tasting room. And then another tasting room moved in, and they recently moved out a couple of years ago. And then actually, because I worked for Figge, I knew the landlord. So Figge used to make the landlord's personal wine, just personal consumption. And then when Figge passed away, I started making the landlord's personal consumption wine.
That's a good way to get in with him.
Yeah, so I kind of took over that tradition, making his personal batch of wine, just a couple barrels of Syrah. But meanwhile, while I was doing that, there was still somebody else occupying the tasting room, another winery. But I've always had that relationship with the landlord because of Figge. And then when that tasting room moved out, I went to the landlord and I was like, hey, I'm kind of at a point right now where I'm growing, my production's increasing, and I'd like to move in if I can. And he didn't want anyone else in there but me.
Nice.
So that's how that happened.
And I imagine it's been a beneficial move for you. Obviously, you pour your wines at Wrath on occasion, I know, but you've also got up there. I mean, I imagine being in Carmel, and in an art gallery, it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, it's definitely a good spot to be in. We're on a busy street. We got excellent restaurants nearby. We got all the art galleries, and we're surrounded by so many other tasting rooms as well.
Yeah, lots of great wine up there. All right, let's move on. Last wine, 2019 Petit Verdot, one of my favorite varietals, easily top 10 for me. And probably my favorite Bordeaux varietal, which is blasphemy for a lot of people. But I love the fact that it's so uncommon.
That you say varietal.
I know you're still, it hurts your heart every time I say it.
Hurts my ears.
Oh, you're right. Scott says we didn't hear what Matt and Carrie were making with the Malbec. No, they didn't do anything special. They're still having
They're still having Hungarian mushroom soup.
Yeah. Is it pairing nicely with the Malbec? Oh, bolognese sauce. All right, they moved on to Italian. Nice.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. All I do is Google all this stuff once you guys send out the list, and I see. And actually, this came up on a few websites, so I was like, I'll try it. But yeah,
But this is not your typical Malbec.
It's true.
Yeah, and right now we're having a Mississippi roast over mashed potatoes, which goes actually better with the Malbec. That and the Malbec are really good. I haven't tried it with the Petit Verdot yet.
So Mississippi roast is that possum?
One with the pepperoncinis. It's a beef chuck roast and with pepperoncinis and like ranch stuff. And
I was wondering if it was more squirrel or possum, given the Mississippi aspect of it.
I definitely want to go over to Matt and Carrie's for dinner. I mean, my God, like 5-course tasting, 4-course menu to pair with every wine.
We had Scott and Kelly over. We should have a party here. They were here.
We will. One of these days, we will have the virtual tasting at your house with everybody there. It'll be a grand old time. We'll make that happen. Nice. So yeah, let's talk Petit Verdot again. One of the 5 noble grapes of Bordeaux, but almost always reduced to 10%, 5% less than that, if brought in at all. This too, San Antonio Valley. Is this Panhandle Vineyard as well, or is this different vineyard down
This
there?
is Merritt Vineyard. So
Okay.
a really small vineyard. Less than, I mean, it's really just a few rows of Petit Verdot that's grown there.
Wow.
Yeah, so typically I get 2 or 3 barrels out of it, and I take the whole thing. So really small, but you know the growers are very precise. You know, they know every vine in their vineyard, and they do such a great job growing it. And again, it was just through word of mouth. It all started with the Zinfandel grower who knew a lot of people, and eventually kind of worked my way to meeting this family, the Merritt Vineyard family.
It's that networking, man. That's what it does.
Yeah, that's really what it is. So I got really lucky coming across
For
that.
Miguel, it's not networking as much as it's like nepotism. Like,
That's a terrible word to throw out there. Where's the
it's great,
nepotism?
like Figge took you under his wing, and it's like everything connected, one thing to another, trailed down. Like, what an amazing! I think it's amazing. Everyone helping everyone.
She says nepotism. I say networking. Miguel, you take that as it is.
Hey,
really,
nepotism's not bad if you get to benefit from it. It only sucks.
Oh,
if
sounds like a girl from the west side of LA saying nepotism isn't a bad thing, but that's all right.
if you benefit from it.
Well, that's even worse. We're gonna have to have a talk about classism in America, Allison. All right. Anyway, Miguel, Petit Verdot, go.
So my first introduction with Petit Verdot was when I worked for Paul Hobbs up in Sonoma. Big Bordeaux house, Cabernets. They do Pinot Chard too, but their main focus was Bordeaux's. And just like you mentioned, often blended away in very small percentages. But I was very lucky to be able to taste that Petit Verdot on its own. Never had it before working there. And it's always something that kind of stuck with me. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I wish I could, find more of this. Anyways, a few years later, after I left Paul Hobbs, moved back down to Monterey, working with my current varietals. And then that's when I met the Merritt family who grew Petit Verdot. And I was just like, well, I've kind of worked with it before, never really made it my way. And they're again looking for a place to, a winemaker to kind of take over, their grapes. And, so I did. And the first year, I was just so impressed by it. I did have that thought in my mind, the slightest thought, like, oh, maybe I should blend it. And I was like, you know what? It's tasting so great on its own. I just have to bottle it the way it is. People need to be able to taste what Petit Verdot is like, and I just want to show that to, the small world around me. Like, I just sell around Monterey, really, but I want to be able to showcase this site, this vineyard, and that variety. And I've worked with it since 2015 or 2016.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so I've, every year I learn something new about it. It's just not something you see too often.
It's got this beautiful balance of rich fruit and the savory characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And the savory just jumps out of the glass at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I think it's really unique to that site. Beautiful site, just surrounded by hills, rolling hills. There's nothing around it, just pastures and other vineyards.
Why do you think Petit Verdot doesn't get to shine by itself often?
I think a lot of it has to do with tradition, for good or worse. But people tend to, blend away some of these other Bordeaux varietals to help highlight Cabernet. And I think that's why Petit Verdot just kind of gets hidden. And unfortunately, it's not shown off, even though it could stand alone on its own with, even compared side by side with, Cabernet or Cab Franc or Malbec or some of these other Bordeauxs. I think people would be very pleasantly surprised enjoying Petit Verdot on its own.
Yeah. My theory has always been because Petit Verdot is such a late ripening grape that it really requires a lot of heat days and a lot of time to get to that fully ripened state, or else if it's in a cooler climate like Bordeaux, it can be so green and so tannic that it's unmanageable. And it's places like San Antonio Valley, like Paso Robles, even a weird place like Virginia, which like the Petit Verdot coming out of Virginia is phenomenal, and it's super high acid,
Mhm.
and you don't get a lot of the green notes to it, which is odd. I don't know why, but I've always felt like Petit Verdot and Cab Franc are two grapes that the two Bordeaux varietals that really will thrive in warmer environments like Paso, because you can basically let them hang until late October, early mid November. You eliminate a lot of those pyrazines, soften up the tannins, and you can get these beautiful expressive wines that show that savory note, a lot of the same fruit as Cabernet, but not in a heavily tannic package.
Yeah. Yeah. This site where it's the way it's situated, it doesn't get any of that, Monterey Bay breeze. It's just tucked away between, the rolling hills, full exposure to sunlight. So it gets all that heat, still cools down at night, but there's no wind. And I think it's a great location for this Petit Verdot to grow.
Yeah, Michelle wants to know, what are the characteristics of Petit Verdot?
I think Petit Verdot has a lot of those savory notes, just kind of naturally that come about from the fruit itself. It is softer tannins, which is one of the reasons why it also gets blended in Cabernet, which can tend to have harsher tannins to kind of soften it up, make it a little more velvety, or kind of create that texture. So I think that's some of the unique things about Petit Verdot is just the flavor profile that it can provide and the way it does complement other Bordeaux blends.
Yeah, when it doesn't fully ripen, it can have a fair amount of pyrazines to it, that kind of green vegetal note that you find in cooler weather Cab Francs, and it does have those higher tannins when it's not allowed to really hang, because it is such a late ripening grape. So it can be soft. This one is beautiful, and I almost get some minty notes on kind of the mid palate and the finish of this, which I think is so interesting and adds such a complexity to this wine. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful. Is this something you see yourself, working with consistently from here on out? Kind of being a trailblazer or a harbinger of Petit Verdot?
Oh yeah, for sure. I love Petit Verdot. This is my favorite wine to work with, and I love that vineyard. That's definitely very dedicated to that site. So I'll always work with this vineyard as long as I can.
Nice. And are you doing neutral oak on this? Or are you adding any new oak to this?
This is at about 25% new French oak.
Okay. Nice. Have you considered upping the oak, or maybe trying an unoaked version, or you just think that's about the right amount?
That seems to be the right amount. Again, I'm trying to complement the wine, not do too much of one thing or another, just create something in balance. And just try to, showcase the fruit more importantly than anything else.
Yeah. And 14.4 for a grape that's so late ripening is just amazing that you're able to keep the alcohol down on this.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Wonderful. So food pairings with this. What would you pair this with, Miguel? This one I'm still contemplating what I would pair with this.
Yeah, for me, I'm not much of a person in the kitchen, to be honest, but I do love to grill. That is like my thing, and I love just being outside by the grill and just kind of working with different cuts of meats. And this is always my go-to. Just being outside by the fire and just grilling up anything. That's what I like to do with this.
I think what's nice about it, I think I could see it ranging from anything from duck all the way to like a lovely steak. I mean, I could it working kind of across the board with different meats.
Oh yeah, even something a little gamier like a venison would pair, because it has such a nice bright acidity. I think it would really, counteract something that's super gamey like lamb or venison or even like bison, which is very sinewy in that sense. It's beautiful. I mean, yeah, mushrooms. The Hungarian mushroom soup, actually, this would have been a great pairing with it as well. You don't get the depth, but I think that acidity and the brightness of this would pair really. Cassoulet, good answer, Michelle. Cassoulet would go great with this. Michelle wants to know, how do you manage to keep the alcohol down in your wines? Do you blend riper with less ripe grapes?
No, so I just harvest the grapes all at the same time. So I try to be at around 24 bricks, which would put it around, that lower alcohol. Once you get to 25 or above, that's when you're getting into higher alcohol. So I just like to pick earlier, keep that alcohol lower while still retaining the acidity.
Very, very nice. Yeah, these are just absolutely lovely wines, very elegant in your approach. Not overly extracted, not heavily tannic, just really beautiful, elegant, lithe, really, really wonderful. So we're lucky to have you here with us tonight. Speaking of which, if folks want to come up and visit you, do a tasting, buy more wines, what is the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to visit my tasting room in Carmel-by-the-Sea.
There you go. And where exactly in Carmel-by-the-Sea area?
We are on Dolores Street, so there's no addresses in Carmel-by-the-Sea, so it can get a little tricky. But we are on Dolores Street. The nearest cross street is 7th. And we have our tasting room right there. We're open Friday through Monday, 1 to 7. And yeah, just come on by and visit us. You can also check out our website. I do have all the wines available on there as well. And we do ship to most states.
And some of the new stuff, or things we haven't tasted here, obviously, like your Zinfandel you mentioned. You're working with a Grenache. Is there anything new or interesting that you're either have in barrel or kind of looking out on the horizon at?
Yeah, so this harvest I made Gamay
Oh,
the first time. And it is
Your 10th
very
grape.
lovely.
That would be your 10th grape variety.
Yeah, yes. So I think I'm actually really, really excited about the Gamay.
nice. Did you do any carbonic on that, or was it just a traditional press and go?
Just traditional, just has a red wine, a little bit of whole cluster. Not too common for Gamay. It is, a lot of people do carbonic on Gamay, and I just wanted to do my own thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. Where were you sourcing the Gamay from?
San Lucia Highlands,
Okay.
KW Vineyard.
Did not even know they grew Gamay there, but it makes total sense to kind of fit with the Burgundian profile of the area.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Miguel. This was great. We appreciate it. We love tasting through your wines. These were wonderful. And yes, if you are up in Carmel, as I will be in January, and we'll be stopping by Miguel's to say hi and pick up more bottles of some of these wines. But please definitely do, or check out lepecellars.com is his website, where you can visit and you can purchase any of the wines online. And of course, he'll send them down to you. At this point, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask Miguel questions, we are open. Miguel, hopefully you can stick around for a couple of minutes and chat with folks, and then we'll wrap this up. Don't be shy, people.
I just want to say the Petit Verdot is amazing, and I don't drink it very often at all because you can't really find it. So it's really great. I really like it.
I did.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's very much if you see it in a tasting room, like I will pick it up. There's a few wineries here in Paso Robles that definitely have Petit Verdot, and I always try to grab them. I actually have sitting in my cellar, I think I've got like 9 different Petit Verdots, because at one point I was going to do a Petit Verdot tasting at the winery I was managing, because they did a Petit Verdot as a special one-off wine. So I thought it'd be fun to do a blind tasting of all those. But yeah, it's such a fun grape. I love it. I'm a huge fan.
Can you age them? Are they ageable, or are they more like drink within the next 2-3 years?
Oh, they're definitely ageable. Obviously it depends on the style, but yeah, you can hold on to them for several years.
Yeah, they usually have that pretty strong tannic base to them, and even though there's a fair amount of acidity that it runs through them, it's not overpoweringly so that tannins tend to provide a lot of ageability base to it. Yeah, Sandy is typing out a question, which is why she's right up in the camera right there.
You can just unmute and ask Sandy.
I was going to say, Sandy, you can just ask us. You don't have to type it, but typing's fine too. She wants to practice her Mavis Staples teaches typing or whatever it is. We're all waiting in breathless anticipation for the question to pop up. So I guess we should ask you a little bit about Wrath Vineyards. Tell us, how you ended up there and some of the fun things you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so this was my 5th harvest with Wrath, and just I'm always learning and always trying to gain more experience, so just ready for that next move and just try something new. And yeah, the unique thing about Wrath is specialize in Pinots and Chardonnays, and Wrath really focuses on clones.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually bottle the clones separately.
Oh, wow.
So you can actually taste what each clone is like, all the different characteristics unique to that specific clone. So yeah, definitely come check us out. It's definitely we have a lot of different Pinots, and it's fun to do side-by-side tastings.
Yeah. So you have what, like Pomard 777, was there 667 and
115.
So what are, like, if you can, since we're still waiting on Larry and Sandy to type their question, take us through, like, what are some of the differences with the clones? Is it spiciness? Is it acidity? Is it fruit?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of those things. It's some ripen faster than others. Some clusters are larger than others. Some are really small and tight. Some skins are thicker. It's really all over the place. And I think that's what Wrath, they want to showcase is, this is what this clone can do, and this is what makes it so unique. This is why some clones are really sought after, versus others.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's a fun thing to taste.
What do you do for them?
I'm the assistant winemaker for Wrath.
And how much influence do you have doing that?
So Wrath has their style, their house style. And so we kind of stick with a certain tasting profile for the wines. So, I mean, obviously every year is different, but when it comes through, to the time for blending, bottling, we keep all the clones separate, but everything is barrel select. So only the best barrels make it to the bottle. And so we're really just trying to showcase the best of the best. And
I was going to say, I went to Palm Springs Pinot Fest in January, and I won a flight of, well, I don't know, 6 bottles of Wrath, different bottles of Wrath Pinot or something. But I will say, I think yours is better.
Thank you.
Than theirs. That's why I was wondering, because
Yeah.
I mean, I thought their Pinot was fine, but I thought your Pinot tonight was better. For me, and
So Miguel, you've been both insulted and complimented.
I know, right at the same time. Well, that's why I asked how much influence he has on the wine.
Yeah, like I said, Wrath has
It's like, this wine you make is shit, but this wine you made is awesome.
No, this wine you have some influence in, but the wine you actually own is better. How about that?
Yeah. The wine I own, I have complete control over.
Nice. Like Ayn Rand. Atlas is shrugging. No.
How for the vineyards you work with, how often are you in the vineyard?
Very frequently. especially as the growing season begins, and the leaves and the shoots start to grow and expand and flowering, and the berries start to develop. So out there very frequently, I just like to see how each year is going to turn out. Not that you can ever really predict it, but you can kind of have an idea of what to expect, even though there's always surprises. But a lot of it's really just for my own knowledge and just kind of learning about the site and just trying to understand it the best that I can.
Nice. I thought for a second there, Larry and Sandy were just dropping random Greek letters into the chat, but no, they actually have. They said their favorite is the Malbec. It's just fantastic, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. I was gonna say something, but I can't remember what it was. They had a malfunction. All right, there we go. No, so you're clearly growing every year. What's your ideal size for your winery? Like, how many cases would you like to get to? What's your dream?
I don't know if I have set case counts in mind. I would still like to be small so that I can be in control of my own business and just be involved in every aspect and just have my hand in every aspect. But I guess the goal would be to have my own winery someday. Not sure about the size, but yeah, definitely that is something that I am continuing to try to reach for.
Your own vineyard, or still sourcing grapes from different vineyards?
I think one step at a time. I'll maybe start with the winery first, and then a vineyard.
Fair. As we have learned from some of our other virtual tastings, you can have a winery in your 2-bedroom upstairs apartment in West Hollywood if you want to.
With white furniture.
With white furniture and white carpet. Yes, exactly. You just need a lot of Dexter style, plastic wrap to cover everything. And don't close the windows when you're doing fermentations, or you will kill yourself with carbon dioxide when you walk in.
So
awesome.
Anything's possible.
Anything. Thank you, Kevin Durant. Awesome.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So if you're going to expand anyway, so like your Chardonnay, you said you get from 1 acre, right? So if you're going to expand, you'd have to switch vineyards and in some of these wines, right? Because you don't necessarily have the acreage to support, maybe if you're going to go with more barrels.
Or I just make different varieties and keep adding. But yeah, no, that's exactly right. I could, if I need to expand Chardonnay, then yeah, I'd have to go on the search again and still work with that vineyard, but maybe I'll just add a different Chardonnay.
Yeah. Coming soon, Lepe Cellars Verdelho.
Maybe.
Or Vermentino.
Yeah.
Starts the V. Awesome. Well, this was wonderful, Miguel. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We greatly appreciate it. And hopefully for the rest of you, we will see you on Wednesday, the 14th of December with Alyssa Jacobson, aka AJ, as she goes by, who has her label Turning Tides wines, which super exciting. We're going to be featuring, she's in Santa Barbara, San Ynez area. We're going to be featuring some of the wines from there, but she also sources Pinot Noir from the Eola Amity Hills area of Oregon. So you're going to taste her version of an Oregon Pinot Noir as well as her Santa Barbara wines, which will be a fun split between the two. So hopefully we will all see you then. The email will be going out next week. So we'll see you then. You'll have over Thanksgiving holiday to decide if you want to take the shipment, and we'll see you in early December. So
great. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes. Enjoy Thanksgiving, everybody. And of course, if you want more Thanksgiving wines, lepecellars.com, the Chard, the Pinot, great pairings with Thanksgiving dinner. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. We'll see you next month. Bye.
Are you going to turn off recording?
I'm going to turn off the recording. Yes. Stop.